Introduction: the silent witness of history. In the shadowed corridors of history, where empires clash and faith is tested, few figures shine as brightly, yet remain as mysterious as Silverius. A humble man thrust into the towering role of Pope during one of the most turbulent chapters of the early Church. The 6th century was an age of unrest, where the Byzantine Empire sought to impose its will upon distant lands, and the Church stood at the crossroads of faith and politics. It was in this crucible that Silverius rose, not as a conqueror, but as a shepherd, called to guard the sacred truth against storms of deception and betrayal. Though his reign was brief, his courage was immense. Banished, forgotten by the powerful, yet never forsaken by God, Silverius's life became a testament to steadfast faith and heroic endurance. From exile to martyrdom, his story echoes through time as a beacon of hope and resilience. This is the story of Silverius, Pope, martyr, and saint, whose legacy transcends the ages, inviting us all to stand firm when the world around us shakes. Chapter 1: The Shepherd's Call. In the serene and sun-drenched landscapes of Campania, where the olive groves stretched endlessly toward the horizon, a boy named Silverius was born into a modest Christian family. From his earliest days, Silverius displayed a gentle spirit and a curious heart, drawn to the stories of faith whispered by elders and the sacred rites celebrated within his village's small church. The world around him, however, was far from peaceful. The mighty Western Roman Empire had crumbled into dust, leaving behind a fractured realm where kingdoms rose and fell like waves upon a stormy sea. To the east, the Byzantine Empire under Emperor Justinian sought to restore the ancient glory of Rome, but their grasp was often met with resistance and unrest. Amid this political turmoil, the Church found itself both a beacon of hope and a battleground for competing beliefs and ambitions. Silverius grew up witnessing these struggles firsthand. He watched priests and bishops navigate the treacherous waters of doctrine and power, their words shaping the lives of countless souls. Despite the chaos surrounding him, Silverius's faith remained unwavering. His heart burned with a quiet desire to serve not the powerful, but the humble, the poor, the sick, the forgotten. When the papal throne became vacant after the death of Pope Hormisdas, the Church faced a critical choice. The world needed a leader who could steer the faithful through the gathering storm of heresy and political intrigue. Against the expectations of many, Silverius, a man of humble origins and unassuming presence, was chosen. His selection was both a surprise and a sign, a reminder that true strength often lies in quiet devotion rather than loud ambition. As he was clothed in the papal robes and crowned with the tiara, Silverius understood the immense weight placed upon his shoulders. This was not a throne of earthly power, but a sacred trust, a call to be a shepherd to his flock in times of darkness and uncertainty. His mission was clear: to protect the purity of the faith, to offer guidance and hope, and to stand firm against the tides of deception that threatened to engulf the Church. With solemn resolve and a heart full of courage, Silverius stepped into his role. Though the path ahead was fraught with danger and betrayal, he was ready to face whatever trials awaited, guided by his unwavering belief in the divine. This was the beginning of a short yet legendary pontificate, one that would test his spirit and leave an indelible mark on the history of the Church. Thus, the shepherd was called, not to lead an easy life, but to walk a path of sacrifice, faith, and heroic endurance. Chapter 2: Thrones and Storms. Silverius's rise to the papal throne came at a time when the Church was caught in the eye of a fierce storm. Political ambitions, theological battles, and imperial power struggles all converged on Rome. The Byzantine Empire, ruled by the shrewd and determined Empress Theodora, sought to control the Church's direction and impose the controversial Monophysite doctrine, which challenged the very nature of Christ's divinity. As Pope, Silverius found himself standing at a crossroads between faith and politics. His every decision weighed not just in the sacred halls of the Vatican, but also in the imperial courts thousands of miles away. Though his heart was humble, his spirit was unyielding. He refused to bend the Church's teachings to political whims or heretical pressure. Theodora, a woman of great influence and iron will, viewed Silverius's steadfastness as a threat. She sought to replace him with a more compliant candidate, hoping to bring the papacy under tighter imperial control. Yet Silverius, armed with nothing but his faith and conviction, resisted these efforts. He was a man who understood that the true power of the Church lay not in earthly crowns, but in the truth of the gospel. In the face of mounting opposition, Silverius became a beacon of resistance. His papacy, though brief, was marked by acts of quiet bravery, standing firm in the belief that the Church must remain free to guide the faithful according to divine law, not imperial decree. Behind closed doors and in the public eye, the tension grew. Allies and enemies maneuvered in a dangerous game where faith and power collided. Yet amidst the turmoil, Silverius never lost sight of his mission. He reached out to the people of Rome with compassion, ministering to the sick, comforting the poor, and strengthening the weary. His leadership was not one of grandeur or spectacle, but of humble service, living the example of Christ, the Good Shepherd. The storm was gathering strength, and Silverius knew the path ahead would demand sacrifices. But he held firm, a solitary lighthouse shining against the gathering dark, ready to face the trials that would soon test his very soul. Chapter 3: Betrayal and Exile. The quiet strength of Silverius's papacy soon drew the attention of darker forces. The imperial court, unwilling to accept a pope who defied its will, set in motion a cruel plan to remove him from power. Accusations were whispered in shadowed corridors. Charges of conspiracy and disloyalty meant to stain Silverius's name and justify his downfall. Betrayed not by armies or open enemies, but by political scheming and intrigue, Silverius was seized in the dead of night. His supporters were powerless against the weight of imperial decree. Without a chance to defend himself before the faithful, he was condemned to exile, a cruel fate for a man who had only sought to protect the Church's purity. First, he was sent to the distant city of Patara, on the rugged coast of Lycia, far from the marble splendor of Rome. There, in isolation and hardship, Silverius's spirit remained unbroken. He endured the harsh conditions with a patience born of faith, his prayers becoming a shield against despair. His exile was not just physical, but a spiritual battle, a test of his steadfastness and trust in divine justice. But the torment did not end in Patara. The imperial powers, wary of Silverius's influence even in exile, ordered him transferred to the desolate island of Ponza, a rocky outpost surrounded by the restless sea. Here, removed from all contact and forgotten by most, Silverius lived out his days in solitude, his only companions the crashing waves and the stars overhead. Yet even in this bleak solitude, tales began to spread of a holy man who bore his suffering with grace. Pilgrims and sailors whispered of miraculous healings and visions that seemed to flow from the exiled pope. Silverius became a symbol of endurance and hope, a martyr in life, even before his death. Though abandoned by earthly powers, he was never forsaken by heaven. His silent witness in exile would echo through the ages, a testament to the triumph of faith over betrayal and the power of a soul unyielding in the face of darkness. Chapter 4: The Miracles of the Martyr. Though Silverius languished in exile, far from the grandeur of Rome and the pulsing heart of the Church, his presence radiated a quiet but undeniable power. Stories began to ripple across the seas and hills, tales whispered by those who believed that the hand of God was upon the fallen pope even in his suffering. On the barren island of Ponza, amid jagged rocks and wild winds, Silverius became a living beacon of hope. Pilgrims, guided by faith and curiosity, traveled great distances seeking his blessing and healing touch. It was said that the sick were cured, the lame walked again, and broken spirits were lifted simply by standing near him or receiving his prayers. One of the most remarkable miracles attributed to Silverius was the protection of a ship caught in a furious storm off the coast. As the waves towered and the sailors prayed for salvation, a sudden calm swept over the sea. Survivors claimed to have seen a radiant figure standing at the bow, the Pope himself, guiding them safely to shore. These miracles, passed down through generations, fueled the growing belief that Silverius was more than a man. He was a martyr destined for sainthood. His holiness transcended his earthly struggles, and his story inspired the faithful to hold fast to their own trials with courage and hope. Even after his death, devotion to Silverius blossomed. Shrines were built, prayers whispered, and his intercession sought by those in desperate need. The Church, once silent on his fate, could no longer deny the legacy of a pope who had borne suffering with unwavering grace and had become a bridge between heaven and earth. The miracles of Silverius remind us that true power lies not in the throne, but in the heart, a heart steadfast in faith, shining like a beacon amid the darkest night. Chapter 5. The Crown of Light. Silverius's earthly journey came to an end on that lonely island of Ponza, far from the grandeur of Rome, but embraced by the silence of the sea and the eternal sky. His death was not a defeat, but a triumphant passage, a crowning moment where earthly suffering met divine glory. News of his passing spread slowly at first, carried by sailors and pilgrims who had glimpsed the holiness of this exiled pope. Yet, as stories grew and testimonies multiplied, the faithful began to honor Silverius not merely as a fallen leader, but as a saint, one who had borne the cross of exile and persecution with the courage of a true martyr. His canonization was not decreed by imperial decree or political will, but by the voice of the people, the true Church. They saw in Silverius the embodiment of Christ's own path: humility, sacrifice, and unwavering faith in the face of betrayal. Over the centuries, his legacy blossomed. Churches were built in his name, and his relics venerated as sacred treasures. The miracles attributed to him inspired countless souls, and his story became a beacon for those who struggle against injustice and persecution. Silverius's crown was not made of gold or jewels, but of light, light that shines through the darkest trials, guiding the faithful toward hope and redemption. His life reminds us all that true greatness lies not in power or privilege, but in steadfast love and faithfulness to God's call. In remembering Silverius, we remember the eternal victory of the Spirit, a victory won not in palaces, but in the hearts of those who choose courage over comfort, truth over compromise, and faith over fear. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life and legacy of Saint Silverius. We hope his story of faith, courage, and resilience has inspired you as much as it has inspired generations before us. If you enjoyed this tale, please consider subscribing to our channel for more epic and adventurous stories from history and faith. Until next time, may your own path be guided by light and steadfast hope.